All right, Elliot, here's the thing. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and executives, and the thing is, they are working their asses off. They're burnt out. And the thing that they most commonly say that they want to do that makes all of the stress of being a founder, the stress of climbing the corporate ladder, all these things worth it, is they want experiences. They want to travel. They want to go places, but then they set their lives and their businesses up in a way that doesn't enable them to do that. And that's one of the huge mistakes that I see entrepreneurs and executives making, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today. So, what's one of the number one things that entrepreneurs and executives need to understand that can enable them to make the switch from setting up this trap with the way that they have an element of their financial system set up in order to enable them to get that freedom to go have those experiences?
Yeah, there are a few small tweaks that most entrepreneurs and high spenders can make with their setups to earn 30 plus K in nearly free luxury travel. We're talking lie flat, business class, first class flights around the
Wow.
world, five-star hotels and resorts uh, for pennies on the dollar. If they just change their mentality from having, say, a single credit card that's a basic cashback card that they put all their maybe personal expenses on, and then they have one for their business that they put all the business expenses on, or even if it's a card that they think is good, like say an Amex Business Platinum. Oh, that's the top of the line. If I've
Right.
got that, then I'm set. The reality is that that's kind of a trap in many ways. We can get into that, but if they get out of
Oh,
that mentality of just having a single card and redeeming for cash back, then they can unlock easily two plus really big either couples or family trips a year to exotic destinations. They could be in Paris, Maldives, Bora Bora, pretty much anywhere that commercial flights go, and staying in luxury when they're there just by making these tweaks.
sounds like a bunch of crap. Let's get into it. Sounds like
Yes.
snake oil salesman, man. That can't be real. Like, what? But I know that it is because I've talked to other people about this, and it's one of the things why I'm so excited to learn more about this. And I know my audience is as well, because this can, for me, the old mindset that I used to have was, yeah, I know the miles things are out there, and I know you can get a little bit extra. Maybe you're getting 10% off a plane ticket. Maybe you're getting access to the airport lounge or something. But for me, I was like, I'd rather just have the versatility of cash back. Just everything I do, I get cash back. I can spend it on anything. If I need equipment for my business, if I just want to, pay the balance down, whatever the case was. And to me, because I'm looking for opportunities. I'm looking for arbitrage. I think a lot of executives and entrepreneurs are naturally seeking, where they can leverage. And that's been the biggest learning curve for me, is realizing that no, if you set it up a certain way, you create you make it part of what we call, our contrarian investment portfolio, and set up your system like this, you can get these 10x values on points and everything. So it's been fascinating. So, walk me through a little bit more. You're consulting with me. I'm an entrepreneur. Let's say I am doing 100,000 in business expenses a year. So
Mhm.
lower than like a larger business or something like that. So let's set the bar really low here and just say
Mhm.
I'm only doing like maybe 100K in expenses, man. Like what could I realistically get with that? I'm not spending, $5 million to reach that kind of
Right.
like point benefit that I think you're probably talking about. What could we do with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think with 100K a year, you can do a ton if you are willing to invest a little time upfront to get set up and building more like a passive points earning system that's just minting points while you're basically sleeping in the background. And that would mean changing your behavior. Typically, what I see most people doing is they prioritize cashback cards because they're simple, but the
Hmm.
earnings on those are generally 1 to 2%.
Yep.
There are a few opportunities out there to earn somewhat higher cashback, but they still pale in comparison to what you could be getting in terms of the value of luxury travel you could instead be redeeming for if you're putting that spend on the right cards.
Okay.
So point number one, assuming you like travel, which is going to be the assumption for the rest of this entire
Yep,
episode.
that's right. If you're somebody that doesn't like travel, just skip over to the next podcast, okay? This one's not
I'll
for
give
you.
let me give one tip for the people who don't like travel
Okay.
and think that cash is king in all regards. I believe that's generally true, but this is maybe one exception. But for the people who hate travel and don't want to think about it, there is a new card on the market that gives you 4% cash back on everything. It's a
Wow.
personal card. So if you're willing to put your business expenses on a personal card and reimburse yourself, then you could be getting 4% cash back. It's a new card from US Bank. It's called the US Bank Smartly credit card. The caveat is that you need to have $100,000 in assets with the bank. So that could just be
Okay. I
moving
was like,
over
there's got to
your,
be a trade off here, but that's
yeah,
not bad.
you got, yeah, you could just move over your IRA, your brokerage account. So it's not like you're going to be losing money by shifting money from a high yield savings account into
I was just about to
a
say
lower
that
interest
almost
earning.
feels
Yeah,
like a heist just with a credit card. So that's interesting.
yeah, pretty much. So we'll leave it at that. That's my one tip for the cash back.
Okay. Well, hey, we'll
Uh,
take it. He's just spitting value for everybody.
yeah. So for everyone else, we can talk about the alternative, which I think is, you know, 5 times more lucrative, which is instead prioritizing earning primarily what we call transferable flexible bank points.
Okay.
And those are most commonly known by people as Chase Ultimate Rewards, Amex membership rewards, Capital One Venture Miles, and City Thank You points. There are a few others out there that we could consider as transferable flexible points. And the reason why you want to focus on those is one, they're just highest value. Because what most people do is they take those points and they cash them out. They'll either
Okay.
literally they'll either literally just send them from their card into their checking account at a penny a piece, or maybe best case scenario, they'll get 1.5 cents each through the bank's travel portal, like the Chase travel portal, the Amex travel portal, where you can more or less find any flight, any hotel, and book it through them just like you would on Expedia, right? So those points are actually far more valuable if instead of cashing them out, you transfer them to the airline and hotel partner programs that those banks each have. So let's give an example here.
Yeah. Give me an
I'll give a
example.
real world
Let's
example.
plan a trip
Yeah.
for us right now.
Okay. I can give you real world examples from my
Yeah. Give
and
me
my
some real world
clients'
examples
lives.
of stuff you've done just
Yeah.
recently. That's great.
Yeah. So in between Christmas and New Year's, I went to the country of Oman, which is a super underrated country. It was my second trip there. It's in the Gulf. You've got desert, mountains, beaches. Actually, it's not like Dubai at all. You've got a lot of really authentic culture. They don't have any of the like high rises, but it's still a developed, safe, and relatively wealthy country. So we went there, and I brought my wife and my mother in law,
Okay.
and
Brave of you.
we
I'm kidding.
brave of me, but we're friendly with each other. We hang out a
That's
lot,
awesome.
and we stayed at an it was on top of a mountain, but overlooking a beautiful canyon in with like a desert landscape,
Wow.
and there was an infinity pool over the canyon. The place was sort of like a wellness type resort, but it was built in a way that it blended in with the landscape. So like all like black stone type
What was the
architecture.
name of this place?
The name of it is Alila. So the brand is called Alila, and
Okay.
that's a luxury lifestyle wellness hotel brand around the world. They have properties, maybe 20 or 30 properties around the world.
Okay.
This particular property is Alila Jabal Akhtar, and the going rate, if you were to pay cash for the rooms, were $2,300 a night. Obviously
Wow.
inflated because it was in between Christmas and New Year's, and at
Okay.
that time of the year, the weather's beautiful because it's otherwise hot, but then it's mild in the winter there. So $2,300 a night for a room overlooking this canyon, and I got two of those
So you got
because
two
my
rooms
mother-in-law
in
was in
peak
two
season
rooms
at a
in
luxury
peak
place
season.
like that. And
Yeah,
how many nights did you stay?
we only stayed there for 2 nights because we did some other traveling around the country
Okay. So a
to other
$5,000
places
two
where I
night
was.
stay.
Well, really 10,000 because I got two rooms.
Oh, right. With
So
two. Okay. So yeah. So $10,000 two night stay, two rooms.
yeah, if you were to have used your say Chase card to book that, that would have been between 1,000,000 points, and if you have a Chase Sapphire Reserve card, which a lot of people have, then maybe 600,000 to 1,000,000 points.
Okay.
But I know that you can transfer Chase points to one of their hotel partners, which is Hyatt, and get a far better value. In this case, I instead moved over 140,000 Chase points to Hyatt and booked for 35,000 points per night per room. So
Wow.
instead of 1,000,000, it was 140,000 in order to get $10,000 in value.
Okay. So we're going to go again. I like to be super conservative with the numbers. So people are like, so you said 600,000 potentially, right? I understand these rates fluctuate.
Yeah,
So even because
yeah,
you're right, it could have been 1,000,000 in another scenario. Let's just go with the 600,000. Let's assume
yeah.
that or no, I'm sorry. That would be the million. Let's assume, I'm sorry, the
Cheaper scenario,
600,000.
if you
And you
if you
said it was
have the Chase
140?
Sapphire Reserve, yeah, if you have the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which was a common one maybe 10 years ago that had 100,000 point sign up bonus, a lot of people signed up and have just kept that card. A lot of
I
millennials
could
did.
have just done that. So
Right, so
if
they did that, and then if they were using that card and doing and using it the way that 99% of people do, at minimum it would have cost them 600,000 points to book that
Right.
same
Okay.
stay.
So at minimum, if you're doing 600,000 points and you said you got it for 140, I think you said. Okay.
Hmm.
So that is 20. So 23 or whatever right there. So yeah, we're looking at 76% off was the deal that you just got on that luxury room. That's pretty much better than anything you're going to get with cash back. That's incredible.
Yeah, and $0 out of pocket.
And $0 out of pocket. Yeah. So
Yeah.
now let's go to the next level. Like you said, you
Hmm.
found that deal. So walk me through when you're planning that, because I think this is sometimes the
Right.
questions people have is, okay, number one, how did you find that deal? And then number two, how long
Hmm.
did it take you to do all of this? I'm a busy entrepreneur. I've got stuff I got to do. It's like, were you searching for this for like 3 days and you just found like the one needle in a haystack that was like that? Like, walk me through a little bit of what that process looks like.
So most people wouldn't have found that because they don't understand that you can transfer your points and get way better value.
Yeah.
And but the amount of time that it would take anyone else to actually find that and then book it would be maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
But that would be, probably because they would just need to have the base level understanding that,
They would
yeah, you
have to
can
have the
transfer your
understanding,
points
right? But the
to
point is, it
Hyatt.
doesn't take
So,
forever.
yeah. No, no. Especially hotels are super easy to figure out. The far harder thing to do, realistically, though, I can share some free, really powerful tools that have come out in the past 1 or 2 years that can help people do it themselves. The far harder thing is business and first class international flights
Mm,
at good point size. Those are far more limited because of the inventory that the airlines release for booking with points. It's not like booking with cash where you can just say, "Hey, Elliot, I want to go on July 4th weekend from Miami to Paris and stay at the Park Hyatt Vendome for me, my wife, and two kids, and I want to return 4 days later in Air France business class." That's far harder to figure out. Let me
okay.
let me state a few things that will help you, or sort of, we could call them caveats. We could call them mindset or travel behavior changes that that would help you to get more value out of this.
Okay.
One is that The old way or the typical way that people book stuff is they say, I want to go to this exact place on these dates and take this exact flight, and I'm going to use cash to do it.
Yep.
That doesn't work that well, especially if you're trying to do luxury things and get a good value. The far more lucrative way to go about things is to say, I'm looking for a particular kind of experience. Ask yourself really, like,
Mm.
what do I like? What is it that I want to enjoy and feel with my loved
Beaches,
ones? Uh,
mountain, desert, like
there you go.
something like that.
Yeah, and you can put constraints on it too. You can say, like, I want to go somewhere warm when it's shit cold in the Northeast, or I don't,
This is
I
why I live in
still need
Florida,
to
by
be
the
able
way,
to.
so I'm there all the
Right,
time.
right, yeah. Or maybe you want to get out of the heat in the summertime and be somewhere higher elevation with cooler weather, for example, for you. So you can put constraints on it and say, okay, I've also got to be online a little bit to make sure that the wheels don't fall off. So I don't want to have more than a, say, 5 hour time zone difference, something like that. So you can
Okay.
put those constraints there, as opposed to saying, I want to take that specific trip to Paris on July 4th weekend.
Got it.
So if you're more flexible and open minded to types of experiences, then you'll you'll find incredible value. So that's point number one. Point number two is being willing to start planning earlier out. A lot of people, I think, it might be different for different entrepreneurs and families out there. A lot of people will sort of plan maybe 1, 2, 3 months in advance, but especially if you're looking for business class, lie flat seats
Mm.
overseas, then generally you want to start looking as far out as possible. The maximum you can look is around 11 to 12 months.
Okay.
So six to 12 months in advance is not necessarily when you want to book, but when you want to start looking.
Okay.
And if whatever you would like is not there, then you can set an alert with different free tools that'll tell you, oh, now the thing that you want is available to book, and you can go ahead and book that. But I'd say those are the two big sort of mindset, lifestyle, or travel thinking changes that need to be made to be able to get value out of this.
Okay.
Otherwise, the other tweaks are sort of just tweaks to your setup and increasing your awareness, your knowledge about how the system works to be able to get maximum value.
Okay. Now, I want to pivot a little bit because that is incredibly helpful. At the same time, I know that there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs and executives that listen to this and they're just going to say, yeah, that really doesn't sound that hard. And I may need to try that, but my time is so valuable. One of the things that I'm constantly trying to, work with people on is to understand that our largest constraint is actually not money. It is our time. And there's a certain level, if you are a brand new entrepreneur and you are just starting off, okay, you probably need to book your own travel. But then if you have a business that's making 500, a million, 10, 20, 50 million a year, this is not worth your time because yes, you can save money doing this, but the problem is the amount of opportunity cost of your time going through figuring these things out, tracking these things is not going to be worth the trade-off of how you could be utilizing your time to bring in new clients, to train new members on your team if you have them, to build systems or products or whatever the case may be. There's going to be a higher leveraged activity for your time. So that's one of the key principles of the contrarian investment portfolio that we talk about. Sometimes investing in, systems, investing in your business is the better use of your what we call our teams, your time, energy, attention, money, and soul, right? And then other times we got to go through the 3Ds and we got to say, is this something I'm going to do? Is this something I'm going to delegate? Or is this something I'm going to delete? And when it comes to stuff like this, like I said, if you are earning a certain amount, 50, 100, $250,000 a year, you need to understand as an entrepreneur, as an executive, What is your hourly rate? How much is your time worth? And we talk about that. Dan Martell has a great little equation for that, for the buyback method, but you need to understand what that is. And the reality is, a lot of this travel stuff that we're talking about is just not going to be worth their time. So
It's not.
you I want you to talk a little bit about your business, but then I want to ask you just about
Sure.
entrepreneurialism in general and how what your
Sure.
history with that has been. So tell me a little bit about
Sure.
what's the value pitch, because I want to make it easy for
Hmm.
people who are sitting here and understanding
Sure.
of like why they should utilize somebody like you to get these experiences. Because I'm going to call out two things right now in my opinion, and then I want to hear yours. Number one, I think people should be utilizing services like yours in in an entrepreneur or executive situation, because number one, it's gonna by delegating that to you, it's gonna make the trips happen. Like
Yeah,
we're
true.
if I'm doing it,
Accountability.
things are gonna continue to get in the way. I'm gonna miss that deal. I'm gonna be like, oh, like this. I know if I give it to you and you find it, and all I got to do is say yes, book it, it's gonna happen. So that's the number one reason I would say. The number two
Yeah.
reason is that I would ask myself, Stephen, or whoever you are, is this a skill that I need to learn? How is this moving me towards my objectives by me doing it? And like I said, I just don't think there's going to be a good enough answer for that when you look at the opportunity cost of what I could be doing and going out and growing my business, spending time with my family, doing things that are important to me and meeting the objectives I've set for myself. So those are the two that I'm going to plug. I want to hear from you now, give me the value pitch when you're talking to somebody. Why should somebody work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on some really critical pieces of the wasted time that goes with that. And just like, you would most likely not do your taxes yourself. You would hire a CPA, or you would not likely represent yourself in a court case. You would hire a lawyer. So this is unfortunately a very nuanced, complex field that's very dynamic. It's literally changing day by day,
Constantly changing.
and
Yep.
it's really not worth trying to stay up to speed and then invest dozens or hundreds of hours up front to just understand the principles to make it worthwhile for you.
Because, like you
So
said, it can take, because I've done some of these bookings before. Like you said, it can only take 10 minutes to actually do it. But there's that story of the plumber, and the plumber comes over to this guy who, he's got a problem with
yeah,
his pipes, right? And they're under the house and they're looking at have you heard this story?
yeah. I've got
Okay,
it. The
I'll just
audience
say
might
it
not know
for
it.
the rest of the audience. So it's like the plumber comes in, he's looking around at the pipes, and the guy's telling him all the different things that he did and he tried, and the plumber's going, okay. And he walks up to this one pipe, takes his hammer, and he just taps it, and you just hear the water start flowing again and doing all this other stuff. And he goes, that'll be $200. And the guy goes, $200 for a hammer tap? And he says, no, it's $199 for the 20 years of experience, and it's $1 for the hammer tap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the time, it's the accountability. Like you said, I think it's really easy to procrastinate on that bucket list experience that you want to
Yes.
have with your loved ones when there's that initial friction, that inertia that you have to overcome from never having done this to doing it for the first time.
Here's a question I
So
have for you.
yeah.
When you work with people,
Hmm.
especially after you've booked them this amazing experience or something like that, how often do they come back to you and they're just like, thank you so much for doing this. I never would have done this myself, or I've tried to do this myself and I just didn't do it? Because the thing that I find when you're dealing with highly driven people is that even if they're like, hey, when I hit this business goal, when we have a great year, we're going to do this epic trip. We as entrepreneurs are so focused on what the next goal is that we just stop to smell the roses. So is that an experience that you've had very often with people?
Yeah, I think it's happened a lot where it's sort of like people want to take that trip, but they don't because it's too expensive, or they might end up taking it at some point much later on and traveling less frequently and doing
Mm.
it in a far more budget, uncomfortable way that kind of, I don't want to say ruins, but dampens the experience and makes you less productive during and after the trip, especially when it comes to jet lag and crossing time zones, and you're
That's another really
stuck
good
in a
point. Is that something you consult people
yeah.
on too? Of like, hey, you're actually going to have
Oh,
some
for
pretty
sure.
bad jet lag if you do this red eye or
Oh,
something. I would recommend
100%.
this.
Yeah, I think business owners really, especially when you're crossing lots of time zones, really underestimate the negative impact of flying in coach. On There's a real cost to flying in coach in terms of your sleep schedule and thus your energy, and then also just like the physical pain that you're in that then could throw off things like your
That's really
workout schedule.
interesting.
And I know, like, when I mess up my workout schedule, then kind of everything
Oh,
just unravels,
okay.
right? So
That's such an
I think there's a
underrated
huge,
point. I don't want to.
yeah.
I really want to hone in on that for a second. One thing that I've in the past 2 years really started to focus on is, for lack of a better term, energy management, and just
Mhm.
understanding that there's certain points of the day where I'm more creative. There's other, and I need to schedule creative work there. And there's other times of the day when it's like, look, the caffeine hasn't kicked in yet. I need to do the logistical stuff. And when I
Mhm.
travel, if I'm going to a conference, if I'm speaking, at an event or whatever the case is, that has become something I've had to pay more attention to, because if not, I lose efficiency while I'm there or while I'm coming or when I get back or both. And that's why it's like, yeah, I'll save a 200 bucks if I take that red eye from, Vegas to whatever, but I know it's not worth it because I'm not going to sleep. So I'm just going to pay the extra and do the one a little bit later. So I can sleep in my own bed that night. So the fact that you
Yeah.
bring that up and you consult on that, I think is a super underrated piece of the puzzle that you bring.
Yeah, for sure, and it's something that people don't pay attention to, or they discount unjustly to themselves, and it makes a huge impact. So, going back to the original point about, like, what are the pains that we solve? It's that time investment. It's the lack of accountability that stops you from having the kinds of really memory making peak life experiences that you deserve to be having with your loved ones. And kind of, if you go back to why you even started your business to begin with, like, that freedom was what you were seeking, but you've, in some ways, maybe accidentally engineered yourself out of getting that, ironically. So that
Mhm.
accountability is there. And then the other thing is, another underrated piece is the risk, in that if you try to do this on your own, uh, there are things you could screw up.
Mhm.
One, you could screw up the trip itself. You could make a booking and not understand, say, um, that there's an IT integration issue between the point system that you used and the independent hotel that had an affiliation with that point system. And you
Mm.
made the booking, the points got deducted, you book your entire trip, and you show up to the hotel, they're like, we don't have your booking.
Oh
Something
no.
like that you could screw up. Something like that you could screw up. The other thing that is really critical that you could screw up is your credit and your relationships with banks.
Mm.
And
That's important.
while I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a high level understanding of how credit works and the importance of uh, not getting trapped in credit card debt, there are many other finer aspects that people don't understand, that could screw up their credit scores, could, say, kill their relationship with a particular bank that they had a dependence on, and that's not worth it.
Okay. No, I think those are all great points. There is a lot of risk that needs to be managed anytime we are talking about something like credit. And it doesn't just come with the booking of the travel, but it also comes with the actual credit itself. Let me ask you this.
Mhm.
What, looking at your background, you have a long history of entrepreneurship, kind of doing your own thing. What what is it that kind of drove you to the place where you are now? Why walk us through just quickly, what got you into, saying, yeah, I actually want to start my own business someday. And what was that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think from an early age, I sort of built a contrarian identity for myself. I know that that's a term that you use in your community a lot.
We
I'm not
love contrarian
intentionally
thinking
using
around
that.
here.
Yeah, and it's the term I've used before you, or even before I met you. But I don't know. I sort of always wanted to do unusual, atypical things because they brought me joy, and it kind of became a piece of me and how I present myself to the world and how I think of myself zigging when others zag.
Where did
And
that
that's
come
led me to
from? Were
these
you
different.
born with it? Were your parents kind of like that? Where did that? How did you end up, you know, forming that identity? Because there's always that question of, are
Mhm.
entrepreneurs born or are they made? And so I'm always curious what
Yeah.
people's perspectives are.
My dad uh, is, or I can say he was an entrepreneur and was and still is an investor, and had a very unconventional life path. I've probably had an even more unconventional life path. I don't know if we even talked that I'm in India right now. I've
Okay.
lived in India for the past 9 years, and I'm married to an Indian. I've lived outside the U.S. for about 13 years total in my life. I've been to 40 plus countries, and I think, yeah, it could have been the genetic thing. It could have just been the way that life played out, as sort of feeling like an outsider and unusual, either feeling that internally and having others project that upon me, and one thing led to another, and I've done some pretty unusual things along the way. Unusual, unconventional things.
Okay. No, that's neat. So, what made you settle on, when you were coming in, started travel, like what got you started traveling? I'm curious. Like
Oh
what
yeah,
and keep traveling.
yeah. I'd say that my parents never spent a lot of money on things or experiences for the most part for themselves or for me. We did, we I would say we were like middle upper class growing up, and maybe took a couple trips to Europe when I was a teenager, and that was like my first, pretty significant, interesting international travel. And I was just one of those kids in middle school Spanish class that, for whatever reason, paid attention, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning the language. I enjoyed like the cultural aspect, and it stuck. I ended up doing some like short high school exchange programs in Spain and Argentina, and then when I was a senior in high school, I got into college and told my parents, "Hey, I don't want to go right away. I'm going to defer my admission and I'm going to go to Chile for a year, and volunteer with an NGO there." And then that kind of sparked this big interest in Latin America and the developing world. And I've spent, yeah, I guess like 13 years outside of the US and in the developing world. I started a very unusual business in Brazil during college, and then bought a one way ticket after graduation, and moved into the largest favela community of Brazil and started a favela tourism business. And
So you
then
were
it
just
was,
kind of like, you started traveling, fell in love with the process, and then realized,
yeah.
hey, there's money to be made in this.
Yeah, I think so. I did not make a lot of money initially, and I had this unusual business that was like Airbnb for these, what the Western world would call slum communities, but are actually really fascinating and very welcoming, and not like the stereotypes that you see in
In the old
media
movies
and
and things
video
like that.
games. Yeah. So I started that and learned a ton because I was living in it myself, and I just got very jealous of my customers around the world. And I was in Rio de Janeiro, which is probably the most electric big city on the planet, and it was awesome. But I wanted to have that experience of waking up every day and living something new.
Okay.
and being in totally different surroundings. And I didn't have the money to do that,
Mm.
but around that time, I discovered the world of credit card rewards, loyalty, and even as a broke 25-year-old, I was able to amass a million plus points and fund a trip over 15 months to 17 countries backpacking, and doing some cool luxury things along the way that I had never experienced. So,
I love what you said. It a lot of times, so everything that we do starts with a why, you know?
mhm,
And that is one of the things that I always talk about. And sometimes we're talking about our larger why, like what is our reason for being, combination with our values, different things like
mhm,
that. But then there's smaller whys in our life too. And I think a lot of times
sure,
people want to spin their why as a positive. And it's like, well, yeah,
mhm,
my why, my reason for doing this is because I want to build generational wealth for my family, or I want to give them a good experience, or whatever. But sometimes the more powerful whys are actually framed in a negative. And I love what you said.
mhm,
It's like, I saw what my clients were doing, the experiences that they were having, and I got jealous of that. And I
mhm,
love that
yeah,
because it's like that ultimately drove you to say, okay, I don't have as much money as them, but how can I find a way to legitimately get what they're having, to have these experiences? And it's a great emotion, I guess, to drive that kind of
sure,
change. So I think that's a really interesting point that you made of the, hey, my why, it's not the long-term thing that fueled you, but it was the spark that got you going. Was, yeah, I got jealous
yeah,
and I said, I want this.
mhm,
And then you started going, okay,
mhm,
you asked a really, what I like to call, dangerous question, which is, how can I get it? And then you went and did it.
mhm.
So
How
that's
can I
I
get it?
love that
How can I find the
framing that
hack?
you
How can
did.
I find the shortcut? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, who said
So,
all shortcuts are
that,
bad, by the way, right? I mean,
yeah,
my job, I could technically sell as a shortcut, right? The reason you come work
sure,
with an executive coach is because I have frameworks and techniques and I have put in the work. It's not just me saying it, it's the things that everybody else is doing. If you want to go figure it out yourself, you can. You'll probably learn the majority of the things that I already know and have packaged and ready to go. But if you want
right.
the shortcut, you can pay for it. Shortcuts are all around the world. You want a shortcut? Go work with somebody like you, right? When it comes to travel, it's like that's one of the things. If something is important to you, this is a principle that I've learned just across the board. If something is important to you, pay for it. Like, pay to make it happen faster, pay to make it happen, pay to get better results. Any version of that, you need to pay for it if it's important to you. Literally put your money where your mouth is. So yeah, I think that's a really great sticking point there. So listen, I know we're coming up on time. I want to give you the final word here. If you could share one message with
Mhm.
everyone, what would it be? Whether it's about business and entrepreneurship or about travel, what message would you want to share with the world? And then where can people get in touch with you? And I'll make sure I have that in the show notes too for anybody interested.
Yeah, say whether you're gonna work with me, or do it on your own, or just pay cash for it. Don't procrastinate on those big, meaningful bucket list trips to build those
Oof.
incredible memories with the ones you love.
I love that. Yeah. You get one go on this space rock, right? Might as well make it worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Don't procrastinate on it. I love it. How often are we procrastinating on things that we love for the things that we just feel we need to do so we can eventually do the things we love? Well, I can't go on that trip yet just
Absolutely.
because I need to work a little harder to make a little more money. Go do the damn trip. Just do it.
Did, didn't you start the business to have freedom for yourself and
That's
for
why
your
I started
family?
mine.
So
God knows I'm working my
why
ass
wait?
off compared to when I had a cushy little 9 to 5 job and only had to do
Exactly.
36 to 40 hours a week. So I'm
Right.
not in this for I mean, it's fun. I enjoy it. I love what I do, but I'm in it to make money. And so
Yeah.
not just so I can have a big bank account at the end, so I can go and do these experiences that you're talking about. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Where can people get
Absolutely.
in touch with you?
So we're at stratustravel.com, and
Yep.
Stratus is spelled
I'll have the link in
STRAT.
the notes so everybody has it. Yeah. So if you're
Yeah,
interested, everyone, you can go to the show notes. They'll
TYS.
be in there.
Mhm.
And then do you have a
Yeah.
blog or anything like that, or a YouTube channel anywhere else where people
Uh,
can
I
follow along?
I
And
I post on LinkedIn pretty much every day. A lot of short form videos with like strategies, hacks,
that's where we
and
connect
my
in. Everybody knows I
industry.
love
Yeah,
LinkedIn. It's great.
absolutely. So it's just Elliot Rosen, or just LinkedIn in / Elliot Rosenberg, ELLIOT ROSENBERG. So you can
Awesome.
follow me
Yeah.
on
And
there and
I'll
get
have
all
your
my content.
profiles and everything linked there too. So listen, man, this has been
Perfect.
awesome. I
Thanks.
really appreciate the time and the conversation. It's been great. And look forward to chatting again on LinkedIn.
Appreciate it.